Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rise and Shine. This time around, we're doing an interview and we're chatting technical production. We're going to get nerdy. We're going to get right down in there into the DAW. I'm Nakul Pande. I'm a sports broadcaster, and I'm joined by the executive producer of Surviving Society, George Ofori-Addo. Welcome.
Hello.
We're going to talk all things editing, technical production, levels, mixing, all that good nerdy stuff. We've got loads of questions from a few people already, which we're delighted about, and we'll get to those in due course. And we'll obviously you can send your questions in, and Sarah, who's running things in the background, will pop them over to me in the chat, and we'll get going. But first up, George, this is going to be a weird industry to try and get into, and there's all sorts of routes in. What was your way in? How did you start getting interested in technical production and building your skills up to the point where you thought you could start charging for
it? I kind of got in through the side door because I am originally a radio presenter. So I was radio presenting. I studied at West London University. Big shout to West London University crew. And one of the side projects was podcasting. And at the time I was like, give it a try. Big shout to Peregrine Andrews, who I would call my podcast dad, because he pretty much showed me how to use different tools to edit. And then I was like, this is really, really cool. And then on the back end of that, I met the wonderful Camilla, who runs a little company called Pony.me. And she used to send me out on assignments. So I used to record audio, edit audio, and put it together. And so off the back of that, I was doing radio, and then I was doing podcasts, slightly doing podcasts, and just getting better at editing, getting better at understanding the levels and EQs and stuff like that. And then here I am, 78 years later.
It does sort of feel like these last few years of we've sort of been living since the start of 2020 in dog years. It sort of feels like to me at the moment. We do have a question kind of very early on. The person who sent this in decided not to share their name. It's not a particularly explosive question, so I think this one probably didn't need the anonymity. But is there a particular software, this person asks, that used as an industry standard to edit long form audio? I guess we're talking long form. We're probably talking anything. I guess a podcast episode doesn't really count as long form, so I guess anything over an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say, industry-wise, it would be Pro Tools. Everybody is mostly familiar with Pro Tools or Adobe Audition. I'm not, because I'm going on the cheap side. So if you've got money or you've got sponsorship, Pro Tools is what most production companies would probably be using, or Adobe. Some will trickle into using Reaper. Some would use Audacity. Like personally, I use Audacity because it's free. And as I said before, I'm very cheap. So yeah, Pro Tools is, if you want to be able to work around everywhere, Pro Tools, and probably use a Mac, probably. But if you want to be cheap, like myself, standard PC, an Audacity or Reaper.
Yeah, I'm an Audacity person when I'm editing.
Hey,
when I'm editing stuff, I edit my own stuff. I'm not a mixer or a lever or anything. I'm a presenter. I'm just putting stuff together. But yeah, I use Audacity, which is a good place to start, I think, if you're learning how to edit. And it's very easy to fix stuff when you mess stuff up, which you inevitably will at some point. But that's just how it goes. So, what was your first? You said you studied radio, you studied podcasting. What was your first professional way into editing?
Oh, I can't remember. I wasn't prepared for that. I can't remember. I think it was Podium didn't pay me. It was I think it was for ABN Radio. ABN Radio is like I don't think it exists anymore. I think they shut down about 2 years ago. So I was actually a radio presenter and a producer at ABN Radio, and they wanted to do like a sports show, and I was like, I could get what you guys said and put it into a form of a podcast, and then I did that. So I cut out all the rubbish bits and I just put it together, nice bit of music, nice little bed, and they like lost their minds. Like, this is amazing. And I don't know if those podcasts are still out there, But I think that was my first step into it, and thinking, okay, this is more exciting. Not more exciting, but this is a different adventure which I can go into. And then off the back of that, I'll just sometimes headhunted to do other bits. So for a while, I was doing lots of show reels. I was doing lots of show reels. Big shout to Afira Dom. I'll be chatting at everyone today. She is a big radio presenter now, massive journalist, and she encouraged me to help her do a show reel. And I was like, okay. So it's the same kind of premise with Audacity, when you edit and get all the best bits, put it together. So I did that for a while. So I was doing show reels for quite a few people, and through that I made small coin. Small coin.
The little stuff builds somewhere. Well, hopefully. Yeah. And you've now moved on to your own thing, your own thing that you're in charge of from a production point of view, surviving society. How? I mean, this is slightly moving off the technical stuff, and we will get back into the technical stuff. But
get away from the technical stuff, man. I'm fully technical.
We would. That might be an issue for the title of this show. But
change it.
Yeah, Sarah, you can edit a description live on a live stream, right? But you going from the idea of having an idea that is something that you created.
Yeah,
you have a very creative vision for. How do you, I guess you get yourself past that from the point of idea to actually creating it and then sustaining it? Because I think people sometimes underestimate how long and how much time it takes and how much effort it can take to put together something good. And you're talking about big stuff. You're talking about stuff that is impactful in people's lives, topics that impact people's lives, and that requires its own level of research. How long would you say that took it to get to a point where you think that this is really something?
Consistency is probably the biggest thing people need to understand when it comes to doing podcasts. Surviving Society is slightly different because I was brought on because their editor left. So I think I've been with Surviving Society now for 4 years, and I was able to not manipulate. I was able to change what they were doing and made it a little bit. I know some of them are watching, so I'm gonna be careful here. But the original format of Surviving Society was just 3 people complaining, and I was like, wouldn't it be interesting if you actually got certain people in to talk about certain things, and then it just went after that. And now they're big shout out to Tiso and Chantel. They're celebrities now. They don't like me saying it, but they are celebrities. So getting it's consistency and understanding what you want to put out. So I used to do a miniature podcast called Play, which was based on computer game music. Because I was in between radio stations. I thought, let me do a wacky podcast where I just do a bit of music from computer games and then talk in between. And I did that for a while. The reason why I did that, because I wanted to experience what it's like to start from the beginning, try a bit of script writing, try a bit of outlining, and then producing it and then publishing it. So like when you go through all the workload, then you can understand how it flows and how easy it is to make things powerful or strong. When it going back to Surviving Society, I don't have as much control over the process per se. I'm predominantly mostly there for probably creative direction but mostly for editing and producing. So I would suggest certain things to happen and then go through it. But Chantel is like the queen of all the admin and stuff. So if you are going in that route of making yourself a podcast, you need to have a very clear view on what you want to do. It's not something you can just do once a day or 2 weeks or whatever. So originally, Surviving Society was every 2 weeks, and I was like, yeah, guys, it's not very consistent. So it might not be on a Tuesday, it might be on a Wednesday. So I was like, have a fixed day, like a Tuesday. And okay, cool. Why not do it every week? Yeah, okay. And now we haven't had a day off for 4 years. So yeah, consistency is the main thing, and understanding what your end goal is.
Yeah, to anyone out there who's starting, I mean, that's all Incredible. Yeah, consistency.
Consistency.
You'll have heard this advice every single time you sit on one of these things, but it's absolutely vital. One of the a YouTuber who I follow very closely said something great in one of their streams recently, that actually consistency doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start with every single day, because it's very, very difficult to keep up that particularly when you're not getting any money for it. But even if it is just once a month, make it once a month and have a set time for it, and then build it up from there. But we'll move on to the more specific stuff. You talked there about workflows. Is your workflow for editing something, how much does that change from project to project? Or have you built up to the point where you have like a set workflow of, I need to do this first, then this, then this? And how did you kind of develop that along the way? I guess I'm coming to this from a point of view of, I edited I've just finished a master's, and I had to edit my final project, which was a documentary. And it's the first time I'd ever done anything at that length. And I definitely made it way harder for myself than I needed to, because my work was all over the place, and my organization of that wasn't as good as it could have been. It got done, and I'm proud of the final piece, but I definitely could have saved myself a hell of a lot of pain by the way I did it. So have you got it to the point where you now, right, I need this, and this?
It depends on the client. It all depends on the audio, basically. So realistically, if someone was to hire me, I would ask them for a brief. So there's two sections. They'll call me in to do the recording. Then I'll make my own notes, figure out when someone starts talking and what bits they want to keep in the audio, what bits they want to get rid of the audio. But that's very important. So there's no point start editing something without knowing what the client wants. So realistically, if I'm there in person, I'll make my own notes, and then I'll ask them, do you want this bit in, or do you want this bit out? So when it's recorded, editing process for me, I find some people find editing extremely difficult. I don't know why. I find it really easy. Maybe because I just don't like people talking too much, so I just chop them up. But the process I generally go through, I listen and edit on the fly. So when I ask in the brief, what do you want taken out, and the precise timings for that, they were the first thing I'll chop out. So you start from the back, so it doesn't shuffle forward. It doesn't shuffle forward. So you always start from the back and edit backwards when you're removing stuff that doesn't need to be there. But if you're not doing that, then you just want to listen as it goes forward. Just listen at normal speed and then edit when you can. But if you've made notes during the recordings, you can just go straight to those points and then take them out. And then you can add bits at the end of it to make it sound nice, make it a bit fluffy. So the process realistically is to trim it to what the client wants or what you think is deemable, and then publish it. Sounds easy. It's simple.
So that's so that's tip number one. If you've got tip number one, part one is try and make notes as you go, while you're listening to it for the first time round, wherever you can, so that you know where you're going, and then start from the end and work backwards to there, so it doesn't all to make your life a little bit easier. So let's get on to the. We have a little bit of stuff about mixing, which is a slightly different skill to because a lot of people will be familiar with using whatever it is, Audacity or whatever it might be, or Premiere Pro or Pro Tools, whatever it might be, to cut and mix stuff out. But a lot of the production values in podcasts, that even podcasts that don't have a huge amount of budget, are going up. The whole level's being raised, which is awesome as a fan of audio. So a question here again from somebody anonymous. I don't know why you're so shy out there, but we'll of course respect your anonymity. What is your general approach to EQing speech?
Oh, EQ. So for a very long time, I didn't understand what EQ was. So there's a large amount of people, you ask them directly, what's EQ? And they'll just say, it's bits. So basically EQ is the frequency. So you got your bass, which is low frequency, and you get your treble, which is high frequency. And to make your voice sound nice, you want to add or reduce bass, or you want to add or reduce treble. So it's just a mixture of that. When you understand that, because it's quite hard to, because technically on Audacity you can see like the graph, so you can play around with it. So every single person's voice is different. My voice is slightly high. When I get excited, I go up. So you need to have like a balance of that audio. So everyone's voice is different. You can use manual settings as a base, but if you've got like a one, like if you're just doing a podcast on your own, you can tweak it. You can increase your bass, or you can reduce the treble just to make your voice sound a bit more deeper and more stern. The best thing to say is you just get a bit of audio and play with it. And the more you play with it, the more you'll understand what sounds good to your ear. And that's the best way to, yeah. But I would always say add EQ. Try and figure out, understand what bass voice sounds like and what a high frequency voice sounds like, because they sound completely off key. When there's too much treble, it's like tinny, it's too bassy. But then if you get it right, words are just more crisp, really, really crisp. So play with it. Yeah, you always add EQ if possible, but play with EQ depending on the voice of the person that's talking.
Would you say that you've always had, you talked about what sounds good to your ear. Would you say you've always had a good ear for specifically speech, but it could also be music elements, which are increasingly a thing in podcasts, kind of taken on from the sort of again, that kind of production value has just raised over the years. So people are wanting music, and they're wanting stuff to basically sound like a sort of almost like a full cast audio drama these days. A lot, particularly with the narrative podcasts, and which are all over the place at the moment. But would you say that you've always had a good ear, or is it something that you've really consciously worked on? And how could someone consciously work on sort of developing a greater sense to their own ear of what sounds good, rather than say relying on some tools?
I think it's I've honed my skill thanks to the wonderful teachings of Mr. Andrews and Camilla. I've trained my ear to be more perceptive to certain, not frequencies, but certain flows of sound. So like nowadays, I can't listen to a podcast without editing it in my head. It's frustrating. I mean, I actually listened to your podcast. The what's it? Cricket. The cricket.
Yeah, I'm a cricket broadcaster. I do a show. I'm on a live commentary show called Gorilla Cricket, and I'm a guest on lots of different cricket.
That's it, Gorilla, that's the one. So I listened to your podcast and listening to various aspects, and because I'm attuned to certain, not frequency, but certain sounds, like breathing in and breathing out, and like splattering and putting and all that stuff. So you the more you edit, or the more you hear someone, especially if you're part of a production team and you've got a specific presenter, you will over time gradually understand their speech pattern. So that's probably why my ear is pretty decent in understanding what should be trimmed, what shouldn't be trimmed. So it's not something, some people might be naturally good at it, but it's more down to listening to lots and lots of voices. But then again, I used to edit my own voice. So start there, because most people don't like the sound of their own voice when they hear it, but I hate my voice, but I edit my voice. So
yeah, that certainly from my own experience, the oh god, I don't like that curve was pretty quick once I started listening back to my voice for which in my case was for presenting tips for trying to get better as a presenter. But that just to anyone out there, just you will get over the sound of your own voice and start to not hear it as so kind of dissonant over or discordant in kind of to what your own expectations are over a while. Just push through that, and it'll that'll sort itself out, and you'll be able to I guess you'll be able to get a better sense of, be able to treat it like just any other voice, I guess would be the way. You talked there about working with a specific presenter, and it can be very tempting sometimes to, I guess in any kind of coaching or improvement, to take out some of those little quirks. So some people more than others. Some people use like or other joining words or whatever it might be, or they have a particular way of breathing. How much of that are you? I suppose this obviously depends on the client, which I guess is the giant caveat over everything. But how much, if you were kind of going by your own, what we'll call for the purposes of this being a sort of seminar philosophy of editing, which I am aware is more grand than I think is necessarily appropriate. But how much of that would you ever lead in? I guess is the way I'll phrase that.
I ask myself this all the time, because I've got so I work on Surviving Society, which is like a very factual based show, and I also work on the Echo Chamber, which is like pretty much in my mind a very emotional show. So it depends on the tone of the show. So over time, I've developed. Originally, when I was taught to edit stuff, I was like, get rid of all the get rid of all the likes, get rid of all the chat. But Chantel always says like at the end of a sentence, and she always says before she says something important. So I've learned to remove the unnecessary and keep the important ums. So I wouldn't obliterate all her and R's. Like R's, I chop them straight away, but is a pre-circuit to something interesting, and it's been proven when somebody goes people listen more intently to hear what the next thing's going to be. So off the back of that, I would keep various bits in, so it's not too not her. Like that's how she talks. So I don't want to remove that, because originally I was like get rid of every single like, and it just didn't sound like her. So I put them all back in. But then again, with Echo Chamber, because their chat is mostly based on trauma, I'm laughing. It's mostly based on trauma. I keep as much of the physical noises as possible, because it's like emotional noises, and I sometimes elongate the silences as well, just to make it more poignant. So it's all down to tone. So in my mind, if it's factual, make it as clean as possible. If it's emotional, leave as many little trimmers in there of emotion in the voices and stuff. Like, yeah, just keep it. So it depends on the client and what they want, but also depends on the tone of the podcast.
Yeah, that all makes sense. That you would want to keep some of that emotion. If it is something that somebody is sharing from the bottom of their heart, it isn't always going to come out like it's been scripted, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's not going to come out in that clean way.
Correct.
I think you can sometimes tell when and I'd say this as someone who ums and ahs quite a lot, because sometimes my mouth is working faster than my brain.
Yes.
I think you can sometimes tell when one has been taken out when it shouldn't have been taken out. But when you are doing that, it relatively simple editing stuff at the beginning and the end of a block of speech. What tips would you give to someone who has something in the middle of a block of speech that maybe flows into, that seems to work in the flow but does seem to jar? What would be your tips in terms of making that sound
nice? It depends on how good you are at editing, per se. That sounds a bit harsh, but Tiso is pretty much like you. Tiso, one of the presenters of Survivor Society, he talks really, really fast, and then sometimes his brain's trying to catch up to his mouth's trying to catch up what his brain's saying. So he'll mumble up words, and it's not as clear as it could be. So I either remove the entire sentence if it makes sense to do so, or I'll go in and try and restructure the audio. So sometimes, once again, it's hard to explain without showing you, because like with the files you can see it. But if you can zoom in close enough and then take bits out and then remake the word. So sometimes I do that, or sometimes I'll just get rid of it completely. If it's not needed, I'll chop it. If it's important, I'll try and reconstruct it.
Would there be anything you would do other than just very fine editing, or would you, for example, would you try and, because sometimes the level or the pitch or the intonation sounds very different from the start of a word to somewhere in the middle of a word when they're flowing onto something else? Would there be anything that you would do with that, or is it, or when it's got to that stage, is it better to just, if possible, re-record, or if not, just cut it entirely?
Usually we never re-record. Because we get studio time, and when it's done, it's done. So I'm like looking at people thinking, I've got to fix it. When it comes to levels of sound, you can use the envelope to trim the sound, or you can take it out, put it on another track, and then tweak the levels. There's always a method to rectify an issue if it's during the speech. If it's background noise, slightly different. But if somebody muffles a word, and if you can salvage the word, because sometimes you can just take a little bit of here and another bit here and make the word they were trying to say. And I do that a lot. Sometimes I do it with other people as well. So I don't know when I started doing that, but I find it easier to do that than to chop the whole thing out, especially if the sentence made a lot of sense. But if it didn't make any sense, if it didn't need to be there, it won't be missed because nobody's heard it.
Yeah, that's an important tip, actually. It can be very difficult when you've been listening to something for a while to remember actually no one's going to hear that bit that you've cut out and you've had in rattling around your head in the final product. And I think it's in general, if I say it can be very difficult. It is something that is difficult for me. That's usually the case. You talked there about background noise, and this is a question that I ask almost everyone I speak to who is involved in technical audio. So two questions. One, can you actually fix bad audio? And two, what do you need to do as a producer to get people to a level where to set up the environment essentially for making sure that your work is as easy as possible?
The bane of my life is people not understanding that we cannot separate speech always from background noise. So prime example, I won't mention the presenter's name. They said, I want to record, I've got a guest. I said, great, make sure you're in a nice quiet place and be cool. And they decided to do their recording outside next to a busy road. And then they gave me the audio. I was like, yeah, can you fit? No, I can't. I'm not a sound engineer. I can't recreate what you've done. So the only answer I can give you is to record clean. Always record clean. Always. So you make sure you're in an environment that doesn't have any humming noises. You're in an environment with hardly any sound, hard surfaces. If you've got wooden floors, put a carpet down. If you've got a window that's got air coming out, cover it up. Put a mat over your head. Go into a cupboard. Make sure the sound is clean, and then you're good. Like noise reduction only reduces faint noises, small frequencies, not high frequencies like planes or cars. That stuff will remain in there. So another prime example, I was in Brighton recording a conference, and the conference was in a tent, and it was the windiest tent ever, which was fine. Wasn't that much of an issue because it's wind, you can deal with the wind because it's a constant sound. But what wasn't a constant sound was the sirens and the fire engines driving around the park like that. So sometimes you can kind of reduce the sound and lift up the vocals, but not always. It will always be in the background. And if it muffles or mixes with a voice, it's there forever. Unless you're a really good sound engineer, which I'm not, and they could probably help you.
Do you feel like people have got more accepting of those kind of background noises since that for the last nearly 2 years, everyone's been working from home?
Yes, Zoom has changed the world for the better for audio crew because quality is not that important anymore. Just sound is important. But you can get away with a siren going off or a car going off, but as long as it's not disrupting the vocals. Like if there's a massive fire brigade going off, stop talking, wait for it to go away, and then continue talking again, rather than trying to talk through it. So just be mindful, basically. Yeah. Silence is better.
Would you have a mandate to, for example, let's say you are in charge of prepping the guests as well as everything else is going on? Would you have a mandate a certain level of equipment? Because not everyone has got a proper microphone and proper headphones and stuff. They're not that expensive these days, but not everyone's got access to that stuff, or maybe they don't do a lot of recorded speech or live speech. Would you ever mandate a certain level of equipment? What kind of guidelines would you be giving to people? Again, in the spirit of making your final job easy.
Oh shit! I would. Everyone, I believe most people have one of these. That's all you really need. So I still today use notes on my phone to do a small podcast I do called Throwback with Adders. It's like a 45-minute radio show. I record it all on my phone, then I upload it to Audacity and edit it. People think that you need to buy the latest equipment and that stuff. If you've got the funding and the money for that, sure, go for the biggest brand you can and fill your boots. If you can't afford it, a simple phone with notes. You can have two people on their phones chatting back to back with notes on, and then you get both the audio put together, and then you can track it, make it sound like it was in the same room. So there's no need to really worry about equipment, because majority the chances are you already have the equipment. You just don't know that you have it. So notes on your phone is fine.
Yeah, the quality of the latest iPhone or Android or whatever is pretty good. I was talking earlier about my documentary. I shot the entire thing on my phone.
There you
go. We have a question from Gurney on YouTube, I think related to the discussion about quality in Zoom. Is this why people do tape syncs? And talk through the process of doing a tape sync.
Tape syncs is a fail safe. So technically speaking, so somebody will be recording on their phone so you have your phone recording, I have my phone recording. So if this live failed, we will have a backup of the audio. So that is the main reasons to do that. Just in case the main audio fails, you've got a backup.
Yeah, I never really record anything without having at least one backup going. I'll have Audacity going in the background or something. Basically, because I had to can a podcast once because I completely lost all the audio, and I don't want that to happen to me ever again. Keep going. Moving on to more, I guess technical questions. Yeah, more kind of in-depth stuff. And we've got a few things that were asked about from various people before the stream even started. So that's very very keen. Camilla asked, what do you think of hard limiters, and are there circumstances in which you should and shouldn't use them?
Hard limiters are used to stop a certain frequency going up. My God, I know. Why do I know that? I would say they're useful, yes. It depends, once again, on the voice you're using. If it's for vocals, some people have hard S's, some people have hard P's. You got it, what's called explosions. You can poo, pat, pat. So you can adjust the frequency or the decimal point to cut that off. So I use hard limiters. So they are useful, but once again, it depends on the voice you're trying to treat. So if the person is softly spoken, stuff like that, then there's no real peak to go off. But if it's like a person like myself who goes high or goes low, then it's good to keep a balance. But then again, if you normalize it, that can sort that issue out. So you can use them, but either you just have to adjust it to the levels, because you might just get rid of all of the frequencies that you don't want to do that. So just use the manual and then either grade it up or grade it down depending on the level of voicing. But then again, you can normalize something to reduce, so you don't really need a hard hitters. So it's all down to you. There's no one way to do something with audio, but hard limits are useful if you've got. I think it's more used for music than actual vocals, because you're not going to go as high.
As I understand it, they're primarily used to stop people peaking and to stop stuff peaking and going to the level where it's going to blow out your speakers, basically, your sound.
Yeah, but who talks like that? Nobody talks that loud.
I've met some people, but yeah, it is more for, as you say. I think it's moving on to. I guess another question would be you talked about the sibilants and the plosives, the s and the p. Yeah. So let's say someone doesn't have a pop filter or whatever it might be, or they talk in a particular way that they have a lot of S's, or they have a gap in their teeth or whatever it might be, which happens. Which happens. Totally recorded people, or if you're ever recording kids, almost inevitably there'll be a lot of S's and S's. Or they have the kind of mouth noises, that kind of dry mouth stuff, which sounds horrendous when you hear it on someone's audio. What would be techniques to get rid of those three?
If you don't have a shield, shame on you. Have a shield. So if this is your microphone and you don't have a shield on it, either position it so it's close, facing you that way, going that way, and you talk across it rather than into it. That way you'll avoid the and no spit on the microphones. So it's just positioning, or you can even have it a little bit lower. So when you're talking above it. Because depending on, most microphones have the heart-shaped thing, so it will pick you up wherever it is. Don't put it far away from you. Just keep it as close as possible, but just off tilter. So to the right or underneath or not above, below or to the right. But get a filter.
So that's from the point of laying down the audio from an editor's point of view. Let's say people don't follow those tips or whatever it might be, and get a piece of audio that's got a lot of plosives, a lot of sibilants, a lot of mouth noises. What are your techniques to get rid of those?
Hard filter.
Right. So back to Camilla's question.
That could be a hard filter, envelopes, or you could slice it off because the it's a once again I want to show you the frequency of what it looks like on the track. When you see the you can actually trim it and then you can fade in, so it's much softer. Or you can just grab it in an envelope and squidge it, make it softer. So there's different methods of doing it. You either get rid of it completely, or you trim it and then you fade in or crossfade it, or you can cut it out, put it on another track and then lower it down again. But I don't think that would work. But if something was popping all over the place, I'll put a hard filter on it and try and soothe it that way, and then I'll put some fades on it.
Yeah, there's a couple of tools on Audacity, the high pass and low pass filter, which can be quite useful for those little tools. I would say also the and we'll come on to resources. Actually, no, I'll save this bit till we come on to resources, which I'll probably do at the end. Andre Tarka, I don't know if we can answer this question because I think we're both iPhone users, but can you recommend an Android app to control the gain on a USB mic connected to a phone?
No.
Sorry, Andre.
Sorry, iPhone. But madly enough, one of my presenters is a phone fanatic, and he would answer that question, but he's not here. So I'm sorry. Google it.
Yeah, I think that's generally good advice. Someone will know the answer out there. Someone on Reddit, somewhere will know the answer. Unfortunately, Andre, we're both iPhone users, sorry. It's a good question. We just can't answer it, I'm afraid. We were something that was mentioned. Alamini mentioned. Do you mix to lower LUFS, LUFS? I've never actually said that word out loud before. And then boost to higher for mastering for a broadcast. So we're talking levels, basically.
You're talking levels, but that's a sound engineer question. So LUFS isn't really for vocals. That's for musical interludes, pretty much. So when the music goes into another song, if it's too loud, it'll like sound bish-boshy. So I would suggest, not qualified because I'm not a sound engineer, just an editor, is to go in low and then build up high, rather than go high and go down low. But then it depends on the audio. If you've got like really loud clashing music with another loud clashing music and it's fading into the other one, yeah, start low and then go up.
Does genre play into that as well? Because some tones or some genres of show or podcast will lend themselves more to that kind of very loud, almost discordant, slightly unnerving type of music. But if it is, for example, if it's something very factual, for example, you might want something lower to really not distract people too much from the information that's being shared.
I want to say yes, because like the only time I use music, I only use music usually on intro, because I feel with podcasts, music, unless you're doing a drama or unless you're doing like a mystery piece, if it's talk based, music can be distracting. It can lure you away depending on the level of the music. So I would always, my music will be extremely low and then fade out gently. So it doesn't. So when he's talking about that, I can't really help him with that.
Little note from Sarah, who's Queen of Rose and Shine. I would make the loudness similar in each vocal track before mixing, then run a loudness filter after if you need to.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Sarah took the words out of my mouth. That's what I was gonna. I was like,
So yeah, we're basically looking for, again, the word consistency comes up as well. It's obviously very jarring, and you will know this when you listen back, that when you listen to it, if it sounds jarring to you, it will sound jarring to the listener. Yeah. Basically. Mariam asked a load of really, really good questions about video podcasting, which obviously everyone's looking for, particularly now that you're doing stuff everyone's doing stuff on Zoom or StreamYard or whatever.
Yeah. Go on.
So
for disclosure, I'm not a video photographer. I am an editor, but carry on.
Well, we can make these questions more general as well. What's the best setup to record a video podcast, and what mic would you use for video? And with the Rodecaster, which I think is a phone mic, be
What, Rodecaster Pro?
It just says Rodecaster.
A Rodecaster is like it's a mixer. So if it's what I think you're talking about, if it's a Rodecaster Pro, that's a mixer where you can put mics into it, and you got they have it. They have at Content is Queen. Big shout out to Content is Queen. They have a Rodecaster Pro there, and that's pretty much the beginning and end of all recording equipment, basically. So you can put your microphones in there, and you can plug it into your computer. What was the question?
What's the best setup to record a video podcast with host and one guest? Best way to condition the room, and the ideal mics for a video podcast.
Okay, mics. What is it? Once again, it depends on your budget. If you haven't got any money, you can use your phone. If you've got big coin, the one used in the studios that I visit are Shure. I think it's SM7B. They're pretty funky, strong microphones. As for a setup, you probably want to set up like this, but then you probably need lights. I'll probably say LCD ring light. Yeah, you know those ring lights, and you got like a holder there because they tilt, and you can dim the lights. So realistically, one of them is sufficient, I would assume. My mate Tim Sinner, he does podcasts, or not podcasts. So he does YouTube videos, and I know that's what his kind of setup is. But also depends on your background. I mean, look at your background, amazing. Look at mine, Yoda in the background. So yeah, it depends on that. It depends where you want to have the microphone. It depends how far the camera's going to be. Are you going to have two cameras? You're going to have one cameras. So it's all subjective. But realistically, you want a good light source, a good visual, or good length or distance from the camera, and a good talking point. Does that help?
I think only Mariam can answer that question. But that all sounds very good in terms of those kind of good solid principles. It also comes. Her third question was about lighting setups, and I'm certainly no expert on lighting setups. I'm not a DOP or anything like that. I haven't done a huge amount of filming work. But that idea of you don't want to have your talent blinking into the light or something. You don't want them too backlit either. But a good, I guess again, consistency and a good even light. But
to get an even light, see this is when you do this is why I don't do videos, because videos is deep. So you have to correct lighting, you have to get the correct mood of the lighting, and if you want it to look really nice, you need more than one light source. You need like 3 lights. Like you need like a key light, which is bright but not too bright. Then you need like a fill light, which gets rid of the shadows. Then you need like a tone light, or what's it called, a rim light. Just bare lights. So to make it easy, if you're starting off, before you make the big monies, just get yourself an LED ring light. It's just round, it tilts, it can dim, it can be brighten up, and then you can use other sources of light to fill it in there. So yeah, but then you can make the changes in the edit, can't you? When you do videos, you can change the colorations in there.
I guess as with bad audio, you can't fix bad lighting. You can make decent lighting better.
Black and white. Do it in black and white. Edgy. Nice. Done. Next question.
Yeah, super soft focus, like you're shooting something from the 1970s, or you're shooting a dream sequence.
Keep padding.
But on by the way, Rode do a kit that basically turns your phone into a mini setup, which has a small mic and an LED setup, and it has a few different colored filters depending on where you're working. I use some of that stuff for my own. So that's well worth looking into. It's not that expensive either, like to the point where you could realistically justify that if you're a solo creator. And then the other question that Mariam asked, what plugins do you use when you're editing?
I don't. On Audacity, I don't use any plugins. I just use effects. Plugins, I know people use Pro Tools and Adobe Editions. Like they always talk about plugins. Oh, if you want to shortcut that, depending on what kind of plugins you want the samples, do you want filters, because if you're just looking for sound effects and stuff like that, you can go straight to YouTube to get sound effects for whatever you want and then filter it in. But personal plugins, I don't know of any. Sorry, but Google's your friend.
I've done some audiobook work, recording and editing an audiobook, and there is a plugin that will check the levels against the ACX, which is Audible's platform for audiobooks, which will check your levels against their submission guidelines, which saves you a lot of time if you
there you go.
If you have to upload stuff. You don't want to.
There you go.
They have very, very specific things about the noise floor and about the levels of consistency. So that one was that one I found very, very useful. Megan Brady, actually, Andre Taka, says that iPhone would also like a similar question to iPhone, an iPhone app to control the gain on a USB mic connected to a phone. Some USB mics come with their own apps.
Yeah, it should have its own app. It should have its own. When you put it on your phone, it should have that on there, basically.
So yeah, presumably whichever the native app that comes with the native is probably not the right word, but whichever app comes with the mic, if it's should work well for you. Megan Brady, keeping it on microphones. What is the difference between a dynamic and a condenser mic, and which would you use for speech?
Why are you asking me these questions? Why? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I'm not a sound engineer. I don't know.
I think in my experience, both can be good for speech. I think Sarah might be able to help us out here. I was
going to say there are no bad microphones. There are no bad microphones. So it's all, once again, it depends if it's music based or vocally based, and position of the microphone. So when people say, do you want the hard or do you want the heart shape? But I think, Charlie, anyone will do.
The basic difference, dynamic picks up everything directly ahead of the speaker, like this. Like this is a lip mic. If I go out here, it doesn't pick anything up, but if I come back here, it does. Condenser picks up stuff around. Basic condenser is good for a soundproof room, basically like a studio. If you're recording at home, a dynamic mic is probably better, so you're not picking up like people's fridges are unbelievably loud when the background hum of electronics is much louder than you think it is, and stuff like that. So
why are you recording in the kitchen?
That's all I got.
Bedroom.
Don't have a big flat. But yeah, dynamic picks up everything directly ahead. Condenser picks up everything, and so it depends on your setup. But neither is necessarily bad for speech.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a bad microphone.
And both of them are totally used for speech. Coming into the last few minutes, and we're going to get onto. You've heard us say Google it a couple of times, and which is as a resource if everything else stumps you is a pretty good one. But we should talk about resources on learning and improving your editing and mixing techniques, books, podcasts, online courses, YouTube videos, etc. Obviously, Rise and Shine. There's a lot of stuff that Rise and Shine has put out over the years, talking to editors and talking to mixers and talking to producers. But what else would you recommend, George?
I wanted to say Rise and Shine. They're brilliant. We're here. I think Content is Queen. They do bits as well. Big shout out to them. They're a studio that help people get into podcasting. I believe, I want to say multi-track, but I'm not sure if that's correct. I should have checked that beforehand. They help people get into various things, and I think they do courses. Pony.me, they help as well. They're fairly good. I've done bits for them. But there is a lot of help depending on what DAW you use, or software you use to edit. There are a lot of tutorials based on those particular. So there's a lot of free stuff on YouTube. A lot of free stuff. Most of my university years was me just on YouTube, reading up on how to do stuff because my teachers at the time weren't that great. I won't mention any names. So YouTube and Rise and Shine and Pwn.me and Content is Queen would be the places I would recommend.
Yeah, if you're using Audacity, the Audacity forums are quite useful. They usually have stuff that you can pick up stuff pretty easy from. The ACX, which I also mentioned, if you're also have forums, and I'm sure the same is true of Pro Tools or Premiere Pro or whatever else you're using, or Reaper. I'm sure which my friend Dave Pickering, who does a lot of podcast stuff, swears by Reaper and their support. And Andre Taka is talking about his it's a Rode USB. We've got a few people actually. We've got a couple of people joined, Andre and JM, both asking. As Sarah says, I love Dave. Yeah, Dave's great. Dave, shout out to Dave Pickering if you're listening. JM and Andre both ask your favorite tips for getting faster at editing. And JM asks, is it just shortcuts and practice?
Yeah, shortcuts and practice. So Audacity has a thing called Marco, and Marco will allow you to stack a process that you do all the time. So when you're like EQing and limit hard points in there, you can put it all into one package and just press it when you finish your editing. So plugins will be useful, as you mentioned before. Plugins, if you have the right plugin for what you're trying to do, they're useful. But fast editing comes down to understanding the audio that you've got and understanding what you want to get rid of. So if you can do that before you get the audio, or if you get a brief and you've got the timings, then it's just easy to get in there. Plus you've got software that helps you get rid of stuff. I can't remember what it's called, but they're not always reliable. You still have to go in and edit there. So practice, that's all. That's the only way. You're not going to get better at not doing what you do. So just keep doing it until you get faster. But then again, it's not always good to be too fast when you're editing. Sometimes you just need a little time to listen to it and make sure it sounds how it's meant to be sounding.
Would you always want to listen back to the final product before putting it out?
Yeah.
Or before sending it to the client, say?
Always listen back to it before sending it to the client. Because there's nothing more embarrassing that you forgot or you've misplaced something, or you didn't mark, you marked a place and you go back to it. And then you send it to them like, oh, why is this bit in it? And you're like, shit. So always edit, always listen back to what you've edited, unless you're really confident what you've edited. And then, send it away. But no, always listen. If it's a paid work, if it's a paid job, make sure before you send it, it's exactly what they want it to be. Yeah, just make sure it's free. If it's your own work, if it's something else, always double check.
Good advice in general when we're talking something that requires the kind of organization that editing does. I mean, to finish off, I know we're coming towards the end of our time. So I'm always interested in the in the war stories, in the horror stories. What is the worst setup you've ever had to record in, and what was the from a technical editing point of view, what is the job that you're most proud of?
I would say, I don't want to call out any locations, but there's a specific place I used to record in, which was I don't want to swear. There was cat sick on the desk, and there was cat food everywhere. The microphones there was no pole for the microphones. It was just mad. So the people, there was no. It's hard to explain without saying where it was, but it was a place where you went in there. It just didn't smell right. The microphones weren't clean. Even the editing, like there's a Mac to press play, to press record. There was like crusty bits on it. It was a madness. It was a madness. I didn't like it. It was a horrible place, and I've never been back. Cat place. Biggest achievement on a personal level. There's two really. There's one where I did something on that I didn't feel would be so successful. So I used to do bits for Pwn.me. Big shout out to Camilla, who we mentioned earlier. And one of the proudest moments was when I went to Parliament during Syria. Charlie, going to be emotional. People were outside protesting against bombing Syria, and I saw it happening, and I thought, oh, this might be good for Pwn.me. So all I picked up was my phone at the time and a sock. So I used a sock on my phone as like a as a
I was like a muffler.
yeah. And so I just went down there. I recorded to people chanting, "Don't bomb Syria, don't bomb Syria." And then I got that bit of audio. Then I went and started talking to people, asking what their views were and everything else like that. And then I went back home, edited it up with a chant in the background, chant, and then fading people talking about this. And one woman said something really poignant about why is Cameron bombing these people? How would you like it if we were bombing you? And I was like, yeah, it's brilliant. Edited it up, and I sent it straight to Podium within like a 20-minute cycle. And I sent it to Camilla, and Camilla was like, "Oh my god, it's amazing! How did you record this? What equipment did you use?" And I was like, "Use my phone." And that was I felt really good at doing that. On the other scale, I was part of the production team for Tailenders, Channel 5, and they did a live event. So I was in the background doing all the bits in there, and we won a Brit Award, a gold Brit Award for live broadcast. So that's the
Take your up, come on.
no, well, it was a team effort. I want to say it was all me. But it was a team effort. So yeah, but we got gold. We got the gold. So
We got the gold is a pretty good place to end. Thank you, everybody who sent in your question. Didn't know, which is absolutely what you want when you come out of something like this. Big thank you to Sarah for putting this together. Sarah Miles runs Rise and Shine magnificently, and go check out all of the other stuff on Rise and Shine and get involved with them. George Ofori-Addo, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.